Hello and welcome to this edition of A Conversation With. I'm Jim Marshall of the New Bedford Cable Network, and as we roll into the fall and head into early winter, it's that time again. We talked to Victoria Grasela from the United Way. She is and I always have to write this down because your title is longer than a card, Vice President of Marketing and Community Engagement.
Yes.
Thank you for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
You know, it's like we said, it's that time of year, and you usually come in at this point in time. It is November. It is probably, I would argue, the busiest time.
It certainly is one of our busiest times of the year.
Although the last time you were in June, we were talking about how the needs in the summertime were as much, if not more, because it's not on the minds of many people.
Yep.
So it's been about 5-6 months since you were last in, and the more things change, the more things stay the same, I guess, the way it is. I guess the first thing I want to chat with you about is obviously the recent news where your van, the Hunger Commission van for the United Way, was vandalized in its parking lot. And obviously at this time of year, that's not a good thing to happen when Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's are right around the corner.
I mean, I guess there's never a good time for any type
Correct.
of vehicle to be vandalized. But to show up last week and see the damage done to our vehicle, it was just so disheartening that would happen, number one. Number two, of course, the second thought that went through my mind was, oh my goodness, like we have Thanksgiving in 2 weeks. How do we get everything done that we still need to be getting done without a vehicle? And so it's been a crazy time to just try and figure things out. People have been wonderful in stepping up in all kinds of ways, whether it's making a donation to the Hunger Commission, whether it's offering to let us borrow a truck, which is what we're going to be doing, is borrowing it from actually a board member who owns Davico Manufacturing. He has a box truck that he doesn't use very often, so he's going to be letting us use that, thankfully. So it's going to allow us to continue the work. But to know that that's been done is it's just so unfortunate. We still don't even know the extent of the damage. We showed up, there was just glass everywhere on the ground, everywhere by the truck, in the truck, on the truck. Both the front windows had been smashed, the tire has been slit. And then the worst part of it is we don't even know the extent of the damage because the fuse box cover had been pulled off. There were pieces all around the truck. Right. We don't even know if there's mechanical issues at this point. We don't know if it's safe to drive beyond just fixing the glass, of course, on the tire. It's just how much more is there we don't know about yet. And
it took a little effort actually to do that. That's the thing that I get is 2 fences you had to get over.
2 fences, yeah. So there are 2 lock gates that it sits behind that somebody got through. The locks were not cut at all, so they had to have found a way through. Right. Got to the truck. The truck, of course, was locked, but they were able to get in it by smashing the windows. Thankfully, they weren't able to get in the back of the box of the truck, so they weren't able to get any of our other equipment that we store in the truck, like pallet jacks, hand trucks, things like that. So thankfully, we still have all of that we'll be able to use throughout the season. But it's just so unfortunate. Right.
I don't think people may grasp what the truck does and how much it gets used.
Yeah,
to the Hunger Commission, it's irreplaceable.
It's the whole operation. It's vital to everything we do around food insecurity. It revolves around having this truck. It's picking up the food and then bringing it to the places that it needs to be. Just so you have an idea, so last year we picked up and delivered over 431,000 pounds of food. So to be down even a couple days or a couple weeks, that's a huge hit about the amount of food that's going out to homes that now isn't going out to homes.
So you have to go out, not you, but the United Way has to go out to point X to get the food, whether it be from the Greater Boston Food Bank or something like that.
We don't typically pick up at the Greater Boston Food Bank, but there's some local partners like Sid Wainer and Sons, Stop and Shop, Blount Seafoods. We pick up a lot of stuff locally, and then we'll bring it out to partners. Right.
So that's, like you said, it's getting the food and then distributing the food. It's both parts of the operation.
Yes. And thankfully we have some great partners in this work. So Pace, I know Pam's been on your show recently. She called us immediately and said, how can I help? So they actually right now are picking up some stuff for us that we weren't able to pick up while we are waiting for to start borrowing the additional truck. So people have been stepping up, which is wonderful to see, but unfortunate that we had to be here.
Right. And again, not that timing is anything different, but like you said, right before the holidays in general, that is
Right.
just
I mean,
another headache that is.
yeah, I mean, to give you an idea of what that really means is, so over the next couple weeks, we'll be hosting food drives. We have about 35 of them right now that are out at local businesses, organizations, office buildings, with friends and family. We need to pick that all up to get to our Hunger is Heroes event that's happening the Saturday before Thanksgiving. There we'll package all that food into 1,000 meals, and then we have to get that out to all the food pantries and our partners. So it's a lot of moving parts in the next few weeks.
Literally moving.
Yeah, literally moving, yeah. And so there's a lot that goes into it, a lot of planning, a lot of efforts with it, a lot of people supporting, and this was just one more thing that it was like, okay, we got to figure this out, troubleshoot it very quickly. And so we're thankful that we were able to do that, but it's a lot in a couple weeks.
So as we talk about this at this point in time, obviously when you were here five months ago or so, and we were talking about the summer, and obviously we're through that now, and this is the time that gets a lot of attention because there's a lot of holidays. I was talking to you off camera. The one thing that struck me was I don't think the numbers have changed so much, but the one thing that has changed a lot is the USDA has reported that food prices are up 13.5% over last year. So the need is one thing, and then you've got the prices as a whole other issue that you're dealing with, because you're not getting as much for your dollar as you were a year ago.
Right. And we saw a significant increase in the people coming to our mobile markets during the summer, where we're giving out fresh produce, because produce has become so much more expensive. Between the inflation, between the labor shortages, between the drought, there's definitely less produce in stores, and it's more expensive. So if you're already struggling, this year you're just taking a bigger hit for it. So we are seeing the numbers increase at our mobile markets, at the food pantries we service, and I think it's going to continue for a while.
What have you been seeing right now over the summertime? I know it's a different sort of atmosphere in the summertime. As you approach the winter season now, and the holiday season is the winter, obviously more people are inside. People are dealing with, the produce isn't going to be the same anyway. It never is, because it's the winter time. So what are you seeing right now as far as needs? What are you seeing from families right now?
I think it's a mix. Jim, we talked off camera as well that the grocery stores are struggling to keep some of the necessary items on the shelf too. So there's some of that people are trying to go to pantries to see if they're able to find certain things that they aren't able to find at the grocery stores. But typically during the winter we'll see an uptick in not so much people looking for the fresh produce, but those shelf-stable items, the soups, things like that, because they're thinking ahead to, okay, if we get snowed in, what do we have? So they are trying to stock those shelves with it. And I think that is going to be the biggest need in the coming months.
One of the things too, and I just want to make sure I get this right. So I was looking, and I think it was the Hunger America had this stat out, was that for the increased demand, why is there an increased demand? So grocery stores are experiencing a shortage of bread, turkey, canned goods, cooking oil, other things too. I just highlighted those. The increase in demand could be linked to ransomware attacks on food producers, which I haven't heard of. Labor shortage that we've talked about, food producers and grocery stores. Shortages of aluminum cans and glass bottles, I have heard that. Something that people, and we kind of touched upon it, decrease in wheat harvest and rising energy prices. All those things are contributing to the fact that stores, grocery stores, don't have supplies or don't have enough supplies. And I assume, obviously, that as you guys are going out, you have to take that into consideration, because I would assume there are staples that you need in everybody's thing.
Anytime, yeah. So those items we typically see as like those staples that people are looking for, anything non-perishable. Rice, potatoes are always big. No matter what culture you are, those are always things that you can use. So those are things that we're constantly saying year-round, we'll take that. Peanut butter and jelly, because it's an easy meal. Not the healthiest of options, but it is something that at least is high in protein and people can easily prepare themselves. Any kind of canned meat, tuna, chicken, those are always things. Soup, of course. You can have soup any time of the year. So those are really the items that people are looking for at food pantries. Those are the typical things that are stocked.
And those are the things you're looking for.
Absolutely.
From donations and what have you.
Absolutely, yes. Thanksgiving is a little bit different because
Right.
we are looking to do, our Thanksgiving meals that are very specific.
Christmas,
with the
you say
cranberry
the same thing
sauce.
too.
Yeah, so it's very specific of those, but year round, like those are the items we're truly looking for. Cereals. Think about what you're using, especially if you have young kids. Like, what are those things that you're always running out of and you're running to the grocery store for? No matter whether you're struggling or not struggling, those are still the same items. So
Right.
think about what you're using in your own home and what other folks can be using. And it's interesting you mentioned the cooking oil. So this is something we've talked about.
I didn't know it, but
I didn't know it was a shortage
yeah.
either, but it's something that we've talked about before at United Way and with some of our other partners. Is typically you're thinking, okay, I want to donate to a food drive. I want to do that rice and the potatoes or whatever else it might be. But something that we've never really thought more about, and I'm sure Jim, you probably haven't thought about this either, is what about like those cooking essentials? So the oil or the garlic powder or the salts and
Sugar.
peppers, like sugar, flour. Like that's
Flour,
not
yeah.
necessarily something that the food pantries keep in house because it's not something that people typically think, oh, if I'm eating food, I might need this. But to cook certain things, you may need this. So we've been talking about that every year. We try and think of a great plan to solve that, but unfortunately it just hasn't worked because we are still trying to get those things that you can cook quick, but not necessarily the healthiest. So it is changing the way people think about how they donate as well.
Is that something that, and I don't think we've really talked about it, but when you're looking for food and you're handing out the food, and obviously I know you're not looking at junk food, but is there a nutritional value like set that you try to hit or something like that?
There isn't, because of the way the donated food comes in, it's hard to reach any kind of goal. Of course, when I see cases of ramen come in like that, nothing drives me more nuts because I know how high in sodium it is and how less a nutritional value it is.
And if you're an 18-year-old kid in college, you can live off of
That's
that.
great,
But others,
but it's not good to feed a family of 4.
Correct.
And making sure that the children are going to school with clear minds because they have full bellies. So when you're thinking about what to donate, you should take into consideration not the ramen, but maybe the Progresso soup that is low in sodium. It's just looking at things differently and thinking, well, what's a little bit healthier than that,
Because school lunches and the like, they do have calorie counts and,
Of course, yeah.
and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I was just kind of curious.
Yeah,
if
it's hard to, it all depends on what comes in
Right.
donated wise. So that's why I love to say we only hand out things that are healthy, but unfortunately that's not the case.
No, and listen, I mean, if you're handing out good stuff, healthy stuff, I mean, a cookie's not going to kill you either.
No,
I mean,
it's not.
A kid needs that,
It's
kids
not,
need
yeah,
that.
yeah.
So that's something that, I mean, it should be a healthy balance, I would think.
Yeah,
I just didn't know
of
if there's
course.
requirements that you
There are no requirements. No.
that you have to do. We were talking about this before too, in that in 2021, 1 in 3 adults, and this is according now to, I think, Hunger America, 1 in 3 adults were facing food insecurities in 2021. Now that number has gone up. Families who rely on food pantries have increased over that span of time from 32% to 48%.
Yeah.
That's almost half the families
It's a
in the
lot of people, yeah.
nationally
Yeah.
that need help. Are you seeing that here?
We are. I mean, we're seeing an uptick of numbers. Like I said, our mobile markets are definitely increased with how many people that we're serving. Food pantries are saying the same thing. I think as people are still out of work or maybe not working enough or who knows what the situation is, they're just not getting what they need from the grocery store or not able to purchase that. So yeah, we are seeing an uptick in numbers at all the food pantries and with all our partners. And I wish I could say that I see an end to that. Unfortunately, I think, as you mentioned, with the labor shortages, the drought that we've been going through, those are all going to keep affecting us
Yeah.
for a while.
Yeah, and people don't think about that with the drought, but
Yeah.
closer to home here, when you're looking at the local farms, they did get hit.
They got hit pretty hard. I mean, we partner with the Sharing the Harvest Community Farm at the Dartmouth YMCA. Typically, they grow about 50 to 60,000 pounds of food, and maybe we hit a third of that this year.
Really?
It was a very tough year for any kind of farmers. Even with watering it every day, putting in your irrigation systems, it still wasn't enough. We depend on that rain, and we just didn't have it.
Interesting too, the relationship that you folks have. You talked about Sid Wainer, and I know you go to the grocery stores too. People do help out.
They do, yeah.
And so when you get a call from grocery store X, I don't want to put anybody on the spot, what are the types of things that, and Sid Wainer obviously has great food, healthy food.
Absolutely, yeah.
So what are the grocery stores? What are the typical things they provide for you?
It really depends.
Is it outdated? It's not outdated.
No, nothing
stuff.
is outdated.
Right.
Everything is probably, they just don't have enough room on the shelves for it. We'll get calls that things are almost expired, like within the next 2 weeks that they had to pull off shelves. So that's the typical call we get. Sometimes we'll even get calls from the truck driver who showed up at the grocery store or wherever it may be, and they don't have the room for it, so now they have to figure out what to do with it. So we'll get that call that instead of just trashing it, they'll call us at least and say, do you want, we'll get calls about chicken, turkeys, different things of that nature, and then we'll get it out to those folks that need it.
And that's because
you don't know what to expect.
Right, and that's because you've established a relationship with grocery store X.
But you don't know what you're getting. It's always a random call and say, hey, we have this, can you use it? And we're not going to turn it down. We can always find somebody that uses it. Obviously, Sid Wainer, like you said, it's actually different products, which is really interesting because I think it forces people to try new things.
Yeah.
We see that with the produce that's coming out of the farm as well. Like they're trying different things to see what people like. This summer we had bok choy, Swiss chard, not things that I'm used to eating and that most folks aren't eating, but now they're trying different things because it's there.
I'm not eating beets.
Yeah, beets are not for me either.
You can't make me. Starving or beets, I don't know. That's a tough call at that point in time.
Yep.
Touch upon too, because United Way does obviously so much more. I mean, Michelle's been in here to talk about the canopy that it covers. But I mean, we've talked about sort of on the side thing, you've talked about energy prices. We've talked about, well, we haven't talked about it, but it's sort of, rents and housing are issues. And that must be playing a part in what the United Way overall is able to provide to those in need right now.
Yeah, I mean, we're not doing a ton in the housing space.
No.
PACE is certainly
Correct,
the leader in that.
But you're all interchangeable.
But you're right.
Yeah.
We all know who to call and who to, how to get people the help that they need. Our family center that's right on site with us, they are constantly making those referrals to find people housing, to find them, help with their electric bills or help with any nature, anything that they need help with. So we definitely are doing some of the work. We know who to call. We know who to check in with. And so we're always keeping our ear to the ground about what are the bigger issues. Housing certainly is the biggest issue right now that so many people are facing.
And when you think about it, and I don't want to put you on the spot like this, but what's the role? I mean, when you look at housing from the United Way standpoint, what's the role? And that's sort of $1 million question. But
well, that's it. Yeah, it's like, are we helping people find housing? Is it working with the landlords to get more affordable housing? Is it finding ways to stabilize rent? I mean, there's so many ways you can go at housing, and I'm not sure any one thing is the right thing.
Right.
I think it's probably, everything working together to make things better for tenants and those looking for housing. There's some groups in the area that have started to try and tackle it on a different level. There's a group, I'm blanking on their name, but it's the Home Group is what they're called. I'm not sure what the acronym is, that Carl from PACA is actually working on. And he's had some different groups come together, talk about these issues, like where should we be looking? Where should we be starting on an issue like this? And everybody's got their own opinion, and everybody has their own way of what they think should happen. And so I think it's going to take some time to figure it out.
In a lot of ways, sort of the United Way's, I don't want to say the mission statement's always the same. It's been the same forever. But sort of the mission has changed in a lot of ways. It's not, the United Way of today is not what it was 20 years ago.
No, definitely not the same.
Because I think the needs are just totally different.
They are so different than they were, say, even 10 years ago,
Right.
5 years ago. Pre-pandemic needs looked very different than they do right now. But that's what's nice about United Way as well. We have our pillars of health, education, financial stability, and basic needs. Because we're all independent of one another, we're able to address the issues that are biggest in our communities. And that's why, we're doing a lot in food insecurity, because that's what is a huge need in our area. Whereas maybe if you go to California, their needs look very different than ours do. So we're able to listen to the needs of our community. While we all still have that same mission, we are tweaking it to best serve our areas.
You guys cover a lot of ground too, community-wise, and I don't think people understand either. I mean, you're in Wareham to
We're Wareham to Dartmouth.
To Dartmouth.
So it's.
I was going to say Westport, but I didn't know. I'm like,
well, we do. So we do service Westport and Fall River through our Hunger Commission.
Yeah.
We are delivering to those pantries as well. So there is a little bit of overlap, but our traditional services are Wareham to Dartmouth. It's New Bedford and the 8 surrounding towns.
But I guess the question that I'm looking at too, and that I had written down is, there's no discrimination when you're coming to these issues.
Right.
I mean, the towns that you would say are better well off.
Not necessarily the case.
Not necessarily, correct.
Yep.
So you're seeing that.
We are seeing that. You know, when we're looking at the breakdown of how people are coming to mobile market, there's no rhyme or reason to, saying, oh, well, this area is better off than this one. We're still seeing those folks. The pandemic has hit everybody a little bit differently, and that's, that's clear that the need is different depending on who you are and where you live. It really doesn't matter. It didn't discriminate at all.
Yeah. And again, I mean, the perception is, you could say, well, in general, Marion or Mattapoisett or all those, but there are people that are still
they definitely still have
feeling
folks.
the effects.
Yeah, absolutely. You still have folks, no matter where you are, no matter what area you're in, there are always folks that need that little bit of extra help.
When you look at now for hopefully the next 6 weeks, I was going to say, or through the rest of the holiday season, how much, when you raise the food right now, and usually it's a good stretch that you get donations for the next 6 weeks, how long does that last though? How long does, because once January rolls around, again, you and I have talked about this in the past. That
the need is all year. It's not just during the holidays.
Exactly.
And I think people, it's not that they forget, it's that it's not top of mind. People think holidays, they think giving back, which is great, but the needs are still there come February, come April, come July. They're still there. So it's just shifting how people are thinking again and having that culture shift of thinking about other folks all year round, and that giving is not just a holidays thing. So it depends. It really depends on how much we collect. So we try and collect about 20,000 pounds for our Hunger Heroes initiatives. So that Thanksgiving food will go out. And then, of course, we get items that were not on our list that are not part of the meals. And we'll be handing that out probably through January. But that's not to say that there isn't more need than we're able to hand out either, Right. So it's hard to say how long that food truly lasts. We're still, pantries are still getting their food from the Boston Food Bank. It's coming into the area. They're able to adjust their numbers and prep for either higher or lower numbers depending on how their folks are coming in. But there's always a need.
Are you always consistently getting a good supply of donations? And I'm not talking like the 20,000 pounds for the holidays.
During the year, it's very sporadic. That's what is tough about the Hunger Commission's role and about anybody else who's doing any kind of food security work, is that you don't know when the donations are coming in. If you're ordering from the Boston Food Bank, you know that you're going to get an order every week, but they could be lower on supply, so they're trying to spread that out as much as they can across the state. But those calls from the grocery stores, from local partners, you never know when they're going to happen. You can't say every Tuesday you're going to get a call from Sid Wainer. You can't say that every Friday you're going to get a call from Stop and Shop. Like you don't know when those are necessarily going to come. There are some things that are more frequent, like our Blount pickup. We do pick up every Monday from them, but the most part, that's not the case.
And I would imagine for the next couple of weeks, you may, I might be totally off base, but it seems to me you'd have a better opportunity of getting a call from grocery store X right now, because there's so much coming in that they may not have the room or whatever.
So typically, yes. This year, I don't know if that'll be the case because there are shortages. So we don't know if we'll get any of those calls.
And in January, those calls, I think, would sort of not fade away, but be even more sporadic than what you would get now.
Right.
Got a couple minutes left. I want to make sure people have the opportunity you can tell them where they can go, who they can see, and that sort of thing. Obviously, the website is a great website.
It's your source of the information.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you're looking to get more information about United Way, what we do with hunger, or any of the work we do, you can find us at unitedwayofgnb.org. All the information is on there, whether you want to donate, whether you want to host a food drive, whether it's now or after the holiday season. You can certainly find all that information there. My contact information is on there. It's not hard to find me, so definitely reach out.
And one of the things, too, that is, you touched upon it briefly, but I think it's a good thing. If you want to do a food drive, it's not that much. I mean, I don't know what...
We make it so easy for you to do a food drive, so we'll give you bins to do the collection in. We'll give you the posters, the flyers, social media graphics even. We'll come pick it up for you when it's ready. So it's really, if you're going to host a food drive, all you have to do is promote it. Everything else we'll do for you. Call you up, say, hey, we'd like to do it on X day or a week whether
or
it's
something.
A day or we want to run a week or 2 weeks, that's all we need to know, and we'll get you everything you need to get started.
Have you seen a lot more organizations, people do that sort of thing?
Yeah, we definitely.
You said 35 or something like that.
We have 35, so we're usually in the 30s when we have food drives there now. I would say they don't all return every year, so I definitely have some new partners that we haven't worked with before, and so hopefully they'll stay involved with us long term. Maybe in the spring do another food drive for us when we're looking at our Hunger Heroes for the spring. The more people that can learn about our work, that's what's really important. So then they know this is happening. They know that hosting a food drive is a great way to at least, raise awareness for the hunger issues in our area. So any way we can get people involved, that's what we're looking for.
And would you say that there's at least one food drive in every the local communities that you serve?
More or less, I would say most of them, most of our towns have them.
So people don't have to travel that far.
Exactly. Yeah. Or if you're shopping and you're probably going to drive by at least one of them to drop off.
Right, right. And the other thing, too, is that for people who don't know, I mean, you are coordinating, we talked about Pam and Pace, but you are coordinating with the other food pantries and what have you.
Yes.
With what they need, and you guys are exchanging if you need something.
Talking. Yeah, we're constantly talking. And then the Marion Institute, I don't know if you're familiar with this, has the South Coast Food Policy Council. And so, Pam, myself, and many others are on the Food Policy Council. So we're constantly talking about, food access issues. What is the policy that needs to change in the state? So that way we can make real change and, a larger headway with food insecurity in the region. So we're constantly in these conversations and trying to see what we can do to support one another.
You're a busy person. You always are. And it was funny when I called Victoria up. She's like, "Well, I'm available Monday." Okay, we'll do it Monday then.
We got to do it before it gets too crazy.
I know it does.
So
yeah. Well, thank you for coming in.
No,
as
thanks
always.
for having me.
It was great. That's going to do it for this edition of A Conversation With. I'm Jim Marshall, the New Bedford Cable Network. Thanks for watching, and we will talk to you again soon.